going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here to talk to you about Jack Kirby's Galactic Bounty Hunters. This is a book that was published through Marvel's creator-owned imprint Icon in 2006 to 2007. It is created by Lisa Kirby, who is the daughter of comic book writer and artist Jack Kirby, as well as collaboration with Michael Thibodeau, Steve Robertson, Richard French, as well as Carl Kessel, Scott Hanna, and Mike Royer, also working on this. And basically, the concept behind this book is that in the 1980s, Jack Kirby was working on a creator-owned comic called Captain Victory. And in issue 7, he was going to have Captain Victory fight a group of bad guys. And he drew this sketch of the bad guys. And then he put it aside and went in a different direction with the characters that Captain Victory would be fighting. And according to Michael Thibodeau, who later would go on to ink some of the Captain Victory stuff, Kirby said that these guys that he drew, they're not evil. So he was going to do something else with them, and then he never got around to it. And then after Roz Kirby died in 1998, Lisa Kirby was going through some of her father's artwork, and she found this sketch of what would eventually become the concept behind the series. She thought this sketch looked really cool, and then Thibodeau told her a little bit about the background of where that sketch came from, and then he convinced her, you should make a story out of this. You should pick it up and take it where your father might have taken it. And so she worked with all these people who were friends with the Kirby family in some way, and then they brought it to Marvel after it was closer to being done, and it took a while because, like I said, this came out in 2006, and then this all started in 98. I know part of it that took so long, Michael Thibodeau, in the same year that Jack Kirby died, he injured his drawing arm in an earthquake, and so it took him like a year to draw the first issue of this book because he was doing it left-handed. And so it took a while for all of this to materialize, and when it came out, I was really interested in the concept behind this. I thought, okay, Jack Kirby was a creative imaginary machine. Imagination machine, I should say. He existed, obviously. I feel like in 20 minutes, Jack Kirby could do more creative, interesting stuff than most comic book creators today could do in a week. And probably what happened when he was drawing this sketch of the Galactic Bounty Hunters, he probably said, no, I'm going to do something better. And then he just put it aside and forgot about it because he was just that good at churning out ideas. And that's no slight against him, like, oh, I'll just throw on a sketch and I don't like it. That's not really what I'm trying to say. I just feel like he probably saw that and said, I can do something a little bit better, and then maybe I can reuse this later, and then he never did. And so there is a lot of extra material collected in this book. Interviews with Lisa Kirby, Michael Thibodeau, where they talk about the process of creating this miniseries. And at one point, the interviewer even asked them how much of this comes from Jack Kirby. And I think it was Thibodeau who said, not a whole lot. He basically did this sketch that he rejected, and then he went in a different direction. And then they took this one sketch, and then they pass it off as Jack Kirby's Galactic Bounty Hunters. And that is kind of my biggest problem with this book, is that this does not really feel like a Jack Kirby book to me, and it's not. It is a Lisa Kirby, Michael Thibodeau, Steve Robertson, etc. book. It's not a Jack Kirby book, but when you are passing it off as Jack Kirby's Galactic Bounty Hunters, I think the biggest sin that you can commit when you are doing a book like this is for it to not feel like a Jack Kirby book. I was just kind of bored reading this book. I vacillated between bored and kind of angry, and I'll get to kind of angry in a little bit, but one thing you can say about Jack Kirby, you will never feel boredom reading his stuff, or at least I don't think so. What I've read of his, I thoroughly enjoyed, even and I do feel like Jack Kirby was much better as an artist than as a scripter. So even when I read something of his where he was doing the scripts and I'm saying, okay, the writing isn't as good, but the art is just explosive and it is just thoroughly, it's pulling me in, and I am just captivated by the whole thing from cover to cover. I did not feel that when I was reading this book. And that's kind of hard and vague to explain. You can't tell someone, well, this just doesn't really feel like Jack Kirby, and I really wish that there was a better way I could say, hey, it should have done fill in the blank to feel more like something that Jack Kirby did, but it doesn't to me. I guess I should talk about the premise of the book. This follows a character named Garrett, whose father, Jack Berkeley, is a comic book writer and artist. And you find out that Jack Berkeley, he had created this comic book series about the Galactic Bounty Hunters. And then you find out that Jack Berkeley was one of the Galactic Bounty Hunters. And then he somehow retires and moves to Earth, marries his wife Rose. And if you're starting to say, well, hang on a second, wait a minute, yeah, Jack Berkeley, Jack Kirby, you can arrange some of the letters of his last name, it kind of is similar. Roz Kirby, Rose Berkeley, yeah. This very much is, let's put Jack Kirby in this book. And the whole thing is about the relationship between Garrett and his dad. And Garrett is 16 at the time, and he doesn't really think very much of his dad. He thinks his dad is a loser. Garrett, he wants to be a stage magician slash escape artist. And then he is kidnapped by this gangster, Slug. His mom, Ma Slug, was put in prison by the Galactic Bounty Hunters. And Jack Berkeley, who his codename was Mainframe, he did a lot of, he filmed a lot of their adventures, and apparently this was the proof that these people that the Galactic Bounty Hunters have put away were actually criminals. And so Slug thinks, okay, if I kidnap Mainframe's son, then I can force him to give me the film that proves that my mom was a criminal. And if I destroy the film, then they won't be able to keep her in prison. Now, there's a lot of this that doesn't really make sense. Jack was part of the Galactic Bounty Hunters like 16 years ago. I believe that Garrett is 16 here. So why did Slug wait 16 years to try and spring his mom from prison? Also, why is Jack the one holding on to the film canisters? If he's retired, you would think that the space government would want to hold on to that, and then they would know for the last 16 years, oh yeah, she did all these crimes. Okay, so there's a lot of it that doesn't really make sense, but stuff like that, I would be willing to give it a pass if this was just more exciting and felt more like something that Jack Kirby had done. So then, at the end of the first issue, Garrett is kidnapped by Slug, and then Jack has to go and put the band back together. He has to go and find his co-workers. They've all gone their separate ways, and so throughout most of issue 2, Jack is having to re-recruit his team. His old boss, Phobos, has another group of bounty hunters, and he says, we'll go after Slug right now while you get the rest of the old team back together. And that's just a big waste of time because his team, they're just a bunch of jokers. They're not good at anything. And then we get to spend a little bit of time with Garrett and Phobos. They are imprisoned together at Dangerland, which is this theme park for criminals. And Garrett has like 3 escape attempts from Dangerland, and they all fail. And then we need that to happen so that Jack Berkeley can come and rescue his son. But when we keep seeing Garrett try to escape multiple times and he keeps failing, I just feel like we're wasting time. I really wish that you could have had Jack come in and rescue Garrett like halfway through the miniseries, and then they get on a spaceship, and then Slug follows them, and then maybe they crash on another world, and then they have to fight Slug somewhere else. But this whole thing, it just feels like it's padding itself out. Well, we want to do a 6-issue miniseries, so we can't have Garrett escape in issue 3, so he keeps failing, and then Jack and his crew come in, and then they have to fight Slug, and then they escape. It just really feels, I don't know how to describe it, but boring is what I felt. I was just really bored reading this because you look at something like Silver Star. I remember reading Silver Star, which was another series that Jack Kirby did in the 80s, and in like the first half of issue 1, I felt like there was enough material there that most comic book creators would take that and make like a 3-issue storyline just in like what Kirby did in the first half of that issue. He was not one of these creators who was going to slow down. He was constantly on the move with the stories he was doing. There is a reason that people look at his work, not just the composition of what he did, but looking at an issue that he drew, and it's like, wow, this is really exciting. I am very, like I said, I was captivated by a lot of the stuff that he did. You look at something like The Demon or OMAC. I really love that stuff that he did. And this, it just feels like it's trying to reach that level of what Jack Kirby would do, and it's just not quite getting there. And then I said I was somewhere between boredom and anger. The anger comes from the Kirby family, or specifically Jack Kirby's kids, because throughout this whole book, like I said, this very obviously feels like Lisa Kirby is doing a weird autobiography about her own relationship with her father, Jack Berkeley. Isn't that different from Jack Kirby. He has a wife named Rose. Jack Kirby had a wife named Roz. Obviously, Jack Kirby was not a space bounty hunter as far as we know, but this is very clearly about her relationship with her dad. And that is further confirmed in some of the interviews collected in the back of the book, where multiple times Lisa Kirby says growing up she didn't really understand the impact that her father had as an artist. She just saw him as her dad. And it wasn't until after she was going through his art, after both of her parents were dead, that she realized that Jack Kirby was an amazing artist. And that realization hit her well after he was dead. And so this book is about Garrett realizing, oh, my dad is not a loser who just sits behind a desk all day. He was an action hero, and he's coming to rescue me. And even though he looks like he's retirement age, he's fighting this giant slug monster to save me. And so this whole book, it just feels like Lisa Kirby is making us pay for her therapy. And I had a creative writing professor in college who said, your audience does not want to read your therapy. Yes, you do want to use some of your own experiences to make your characters feel more real, but it doesn't need to be as obvious as this is. And even if I didn't read all of the extra material in the back of this book, it still would have been pretty obvious to me, because I know who Jack Kirby is. I know that his wife was Roz Kirby, and so this felt like this is what it was doing. And then I read the interviews in the back, and I was kind of like, okay, that confirms it. And so you want to, a good example, George R.R. Martin talked about how when he was growing up, he would walk to school and he would walk past this mansion that his family a couple of generations earlier used to live in. And then you read the Song of Ice and Fire books, and Daenerys, her family used to be the royal family of Westeros, and now it's just her, and she's a full continent away, and she wants to take back what belonged to her family. And you can see a little bit of George R.R. Martin's personal history, personal experiences in the form of Daenerys. And it doesn't feel like George R.R. Martin is just writing this series as some kind of catharsis of, man, I wish I could have lived in that mansion. It doesn't feel like that, really. I don't think that Martin wants to go back to New Jersey and live in that mansion. I think that he is taking something that he felt when he was a kid, and he is putting that in one of his characters, but it doesn't feel like George R.R. Martin is making millions off of this, getting it out of his system by putting it into one of his characters. That's not really what it feels like. In that instance, it does feel like he's taking his own experiences and making this character feel more real, but it doesn't feel like he's just getting this like, man, I feel so much better now that I've written that and it's out of my system. And that's kind of what this book feels like, where it really just feels like Lisa Kirby realized how awesome her dad was as a artist, and how impactful he was on the industry, and she wanted to come to terms with that through this story. And I feel like it just comes off really sloppy. Now, there are a lot of stories out there where a kid realizes that their dad is not a weirdo loser, I'm sure, but this just feels very much like, okay, this is the autobiography of Lisa Kirby realizing that there was more to her dad than what she always thought. And she did mention in the interviews, it wasn't like she was a petulant, angry teenager and like, ugh, my dad does comic books, bleh. But it does kind of feel like she is putting her own I don't know. I'm all over the place here. And what further makes me a little angry about this is that Lisa Kirby chose to publish this through Marvel Comics. This started in 2006, and then I think the last issue came out in November of 2007. The Kirby family sued Marvel Comics in 2010, saying that Marvel owed their dad more money than what they had ever paid him. Now, this was over 10 years after Jack Kirby had died, and I am going to have a very unpopular opinion on this. I feel like if you have a contract with your employers and they pay you what they are contractually obligated to pay you, and you do the work you are contractually obligated to do for them, then that company does not owe you a dime. I have never understood these artists who believe, okay, I'm going to sue my former employers and then they're going to give me what I think that they owe me. No, they don't owe you anything. They paid you what they were supposed to pay you. Now, if there was something where you found out, oh, Marvel didn't pay Jack Kirby, they paid him, a third of what they were contractually obligated, then yeah, sure, you should be getting what you are owed. But in this case, Jack Kirby has been dead for 12 years by that point. His wife has been dead longer. Jack Kirby died in 94, and this was 2010, so Jack Kirby's been dead for 15 years by this point, and then his kids just want more money. After they went to Marvel and said, hey, we have this really beautiful tribute to Jack Kirby, we would love to collaborate with you. And at one point in one of the interviews, the Kirbys, or Lisa Kirby is talking about how when she brought this to Marvel, how Joe Quesada and all the editorial at Marvel were saying, like, we are not the same people that you and your family had an adversarial relationship with back in the 1970s. I shouldn't say you, because Lisa Kirby was a little kid in the 70s, but Jack Kirby left Marvel for a variety of reasons. One of which was that Lisa Kirby and Roz Kirby, they had health problems, and they moved to California to make their lives a little bit easier, because in New York, they were saying it's a little bit damp and cold in New York, so we want to go to a drier, warmer climate. And so that was one of the reasons that Kirby moved to California, and then that coincided with him moving to DC Comics for a little while. Now, I'm sure that he also had professional reasons for leaving Marvel. I didn't know Jack Kirby personally, but there is an interview in this book with Mark Evanier where he said, someone asked him, why did Jack Kirby leave Marvel? And Mark Evanier said, that's a 2-hour answer that I could give you. So there was some bad blood between Kirby and Kirby and Marvel Comics for a little bit there in the 70s, but then this book being published through Marvel, you would think that was all resolved. And then Lisa Kirby and her siblings turn around and sue Marvel because they want more money. And it just feels really greedy and slimy. There was even, I was looking up Lisa Kirby, who is the curator of the Jack Kirby Online Museum. She even posted when Stan Lee died, she posted my heart goes out to his family. He was a co-creator with my father. You will be missed, Stan Lee. And a lot of people really dislike Stan Lee because in their mind, Stan Lee screwed over a lot of his artistic collaborators. And I'm not here to make a statement on that one way or another. I think it was Mark Evanier who once said, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby went into a room, and when they came out of the room, the Fantastic Four was created. And so he is very right in saying, and obviously he's closer to it than I am because he was a student and pupil of Jack Kirby for many years, and so he's saying these two were collaborators. It's not that Jack Kirby is more of a creator of the Black Panther than Stan Lee. They were both there creating a lot of this stuff together. And Stan Lee was more of a showman who was trying to hype up Marvel with his personality and his way of doing that. And so it feels really weird that the Kirby family, or at least Lisa Kirby, goes to Marvel Comics to print this story that's basically just her trying to air out any unresolved feelings that she had about her father's career, and then she turns around and 3 years later sues Marvel, and then they come to some kind of decision about that, and then a few years later again, it's like, oh, rest in peace, Stan Lee. I'm sorry, I thought that you guys didn't like... I don't know, it just makes me angry. And at the back of the book, there's a whole lot of there's some other unused concepts that Jack Kirby came up with. There's this thing called Thunder Hunters and Rincon and Descendants of Atlantis, and it's saying you're going to get to see all these other Jack Kirby creations come to life through other people. and there's going to be a volume 2 of Jack Kirby's Galactic Bounty Hunters. And I'm just going to assume that when you decide to sue the publisher that published this book, that is going to mean that you're not going to see volume 2. If you look up any of these things, Descendants of Atlantis, or any of those concepts that it teases in the back of this book, there was nothing that ever came from any of that. Now, part of it might be, like I said, Michael Thibodeau struggled to draw with his left hand. It could be that everyone who was involved with this, that doing 6 issues of this was a lot more than they were able to do. One of the people who worked on some of this, he is a full-time, or at the time that this came out, was a full-time aerospace engineer. And so a lot of these people, their lives just may not have been at the point where they could churn out a whole bunch of stuff and say from the mind of Jack Kirby. So that might have something to do with it. But also, I feel like whenever you say, hey, we've got this really great relationship with Marvel Comics, and then you turn around and sue them, I feel like that's not a good look for you. And you can look up some of this stuff that's talked about in the back of the book. Some of these people, Michael Thibodeau and I believe Steve Robertson, they worked at a comic book company called Genesis West. If you have never heard of Genesis West, don't worry, nobody has. They do have a website. It looks like it hasn't been uploaded or updated since like 2006. Yeah, I haven't seen a website this bare looking since the GeoCities days. It does have information about some of these lost Jack Kirby creations, but really it's just everything that you see in the back of this book, of the brief, like, 2-paragraph explanation of the Descendants of Atlantis, or the Thunder Hunters. And maybe this is just my cynical brain taking over. That's probably all we are ever going to see of these things. Since this book came out over 15 years ago, I don't think that, or well, yeah, over 15 years ago, I don't think that we're ever going to see any more of the lost Jack Kirby creations. And I say creations because, like I said, he probably knocked out this sketch of the Galactic Bounty Hunters in 20 minutes and decided, I can do something better. And then everyone else involved with this book said, this is some kind of mythical, he wanted to do more with it. Maybe, or maybe he just thought, this isn't exactly right for what I want to do, and then he put it aside and forgot about it a day later. Maybe. So yeah, I did not really enjoy this book. I hate to say that, because I love Jack Kirby's creations. I love the impact that he had on the comic book industry, and I love anytime I can see an artist who is trying to mimic Kirby's style. Maybe they'd be better off trying to do their own thing, but I still kind of love it. When you have someone like Ladron or Tom Scioli, who are able to very much ape the style of Jack Kirby, and not only the style, but the energy that he brought to comics. I love seeing that. So I really wanted to love this book, and unfortunately it disappointed me in just about every way that I could think of. So that is all that I have to say about Jack Kirby's Galactic Bounty Hunters. I hope that you guys liked this review, and I will see you guys with something else in the future. In the meantime, have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.